Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. This morning I'm joined by Chris, KL9A, who is at CQ9A in Madeira. Really excited to catch up with him. We're only hours away from the beginning of the CQ Worldwide CW contest. And a shout out to our sponsors, DX Engineering and ICOM, who've been supporting the CQ Worldwide CW Showdown. Chris, welcome back.
Thanks.
So give us the update. I know you've been taking a little bit of friendly heat online with your relaxing trip over to Madeira. You're practicing at home, but as I posted yesterday, I know you're taking this really seriously, and I'm really excited for you. What's happening there with Valery in the station?
Yeah, I arrived on Wednesday afternoon, kind of fashionably late, I guess, compared to the other guys, but a lot less work to do here. So we tested the setup. I got the radios the way I like. CWTs on Wednesday. There's always something that we have to work on, and we kind of got everything in the shack, and then was like, okay, well, let's put up more antennas. So we put up a second 80-meter antenna. It's been working pretty well, and then we just now put up a receive Foursquare for 160, and Valery's hooking it up while I'm doing this. So I'm soaking wet, but antennas the day of the contest are going to work better. That's a law.
Well, I love that you're continuing the ham radio mantra, even at a station like CQ9A, where enough is never enough. You've got this great station, and you guys are out there in the dark putting up more antennas. I just love that.
Yeah, what else are we going to do, right? This place is all ham radio all the time, and it's great. Yeah, Valery was putting antennas together in the middle of the night. It's awesome.
So who is there with you? Just you and Valery?
Yeah, just us two.
What's on the agenda later today? Just get on and operate in a casual way?
No, I'm going to test everything after we get off here, make sure everything's finalized. Valerie will probably go to the store, and then I'm going to just rest, go to sleep. Hopefully I can sleep until about 2300, study my propagation and my plan and just kind of get in the right headspace. That's always kind of hard when you have, projects. You're not really in the zone of focusing on what you're going to do in the contest, and that's next on the agenda.
So I know that you have this chat set up between yourself and Dan and Brazzo, which I find very revealing about how this competition at the top level, you guys are still enjoying kind of busting each other and communicating back and forth. And I suppose you may have heard some of the comments made by KL9A. You probably haven't seen the interview I did with Felipe NP4Z yet. But do you have any perspective on what you're hearing about the horse race between the three of you?
Yeah, I've got lots of perspective, Kevin. The chat between Dan and Brazzo and I is actually pretty quiet. We're not really saying a whole lot. Maybe it's because Brazzo's in the jungle the whole time trying to work on his antennas. But Dan and I have talked a lot. There's a lot of CT3s on. There's a lot of guys on in Madeira. And that's going to really be a problem for me with the mult dilution. But I can't change it. It is what it is. I feel like I'm kind of the black sheep in this race. Everyone's rooting for Dan, or they're rooting for the European guy that's in Colombia, and then there's me. They're just like whatever, which is fine. But it's kind of interesting. I haven't really had any messages or anything. I can just kind of do my own thing, and that's actually kind of nice. Less input is always okay.
Well, I can tell you from my standpoint, because I get a lot of offline messages, there's a lot of people rooting for you. I think the difference is that Brazzo has been very visible because he's been there in Colombia and he's been posting, and I've interviewed him a couple times, as well as Dan and Levi, and it's just been a little bit quiet on your front. And I had people asking me, like, what's up with Chris? When are you going to talk to him? So I know that there's a pretty strong contingent of people that are being supportive. What are you finding from a propagation standpoint, if you had much time to be on the air?
Yeah, for Dan and I, we do this. We've done it a lot where, we get on the air at the same time and we say, hey, I'm running on 10. What do you hear? And then, of course, we have the reverse beacon. So we're kind of aggressively refreshing it to see how loud we are compared to the other guy. And so far, no surprises. Dan's definitely got an advantage on the high bands. I wouldn't say it's dramatic, but it's certainly there. The station plays very, very well in the low bands, and that's been very apparent. So no surprises. I'd say so far Jose's predictions are spot on. The CR3A guys are on. I was just listening to them on 10, and they're super loud. They did work one guy that I couldn't hear, but there was about three or four calling them that they couldn't hear. So it it's so variable, your antennas and your angles, and uh, there's a lot. So I don't know. Propagation is not surprising, but it's almost overwhelming. When you're in zone 8 or zone 7, you point at the US and you're still working Europe, and the openings at the same time, right? It's the same thing. And then it goes to the west to JA, and everything's the same. From here, it's a little more complicated. So that's kind of the big focus right now for me.
So, Chris, one of the things I've been trying to do the last couple of days is also shine a spotlight on some of the other operators who are out there, because clearly with the CQ Showdown, it's been Chris, Brazzo, and Dan, but there are a lot of other players that are fighting for at least a spot in the top 10. Do you have any comments about that group and name names?
Yeah. I know all these guys, of course. You know, it was always really fun competing against Andy V47T and Tom 8P5A when I was in Costa Rica, and those guys just keep upping their game. I worked Andy on 160 last night, which was kind of cool because I know I've been to that station, so it's cool to hear the same station. Um, you know, those guys always have huge scores. KP4AA and KP2B, I hope they have a nice close battle. I won't be watching the scoreboard, so I won't know until the end. But John has been asking for lots of tips. The jury's still out if he listens to me or not. Um, I've told him the same thing 100 times, but if you're going to do what you're going to do, that's cool. I'm not the expert. Maybe I'm wrong. But what I find more interesting actually is the multi singles and the multi op races. Our friends at Sugar Japan 2 Whiskey, of course, Valery Station Echo Whiskey 5 Alpha will be on. Those races are always so close, and I wish I was kind of watching those, but I can check it out after the fact.
What about the single ops from Europe? Are there any favorites there?
Obviously Felipe is the one, CR6K, great op and a great location and a big station. Can't go wrong. I'd like to see him break 11,000 QSOs. I analyzed his logs pretty extensively for this trip, and he's kind of got a disadvantage with QSO totals because he doesn't necessarily want to run Europe on 80 meters for 1 point, even though he can. So 10,000 QSOs with high point totals, very impressive from Europe. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure who else is on single op from Europe.
So you've already mentioned the challenge of having additional people there at CT3. What are the advantages that you have? Could you underscore those for us?
I don't know. Is Dan going to see this? I don't want to.
I think Dan's too busy. He's not going to watch this.
The advantages in CT3, the station itself just is amazing. There is no noise. I watched Levi's sweepstakes thing last night, and he talked about no noise in Shamit, and I would say this place is every bit as good. And I mean that. That's very impressive. So that's an advantage. The diversity with the directions is a huge advantage here. I've got free radios like Dan does. I don't have quite the flexibility that Dan does in the third radio. So my strategy there is a little bit different. But, the guys have to call me and I'll put them in the log. And then if I have to move a bunch of mults, that's what we have to do.
Tell me about that third radio. What are the weaknesses there?
The third radio here is the in-band station, which is really good, but it's only 40 through 10. So 80 and 160, Dan's going to probably, I'm guessing, I know Dan. He's going to move a bunch of guys to 160 on the third radio. He's going to, without ruining his two runs, move a bunch of guys, tune around on 160 when it's slower on the other two bands. And I can't do that. So I have to be a little more savvy about it. But I can certainly do it on the high bands. As I move to the low bands, I can do the same thing on the high bands. So it's not a total disadvantage, but it's like he said, you get 10 more mults. It's a big deal. So it is what it is.
Chris, one of the things that comes up consistently in the conversations I'm having is when we talk about rate, that you and Dan are probably at the top of the leaderboard. But when it comes to mults, Brazzo may have an advantage. What's your take on that?
I heard that. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. Mults it's different as a single op. You're not trying to work every opening on every band because you can't. And if you don't get the QSOs, you're not going to have the score. So it's a balancing act. And as a single op, you basically just try to get the most, capture as much as you can, and then move on. If Brazzo's got, knowledge of propagation and stuff, that'll certainly help him find mults. He'll know when to stay on, waiting for guys to call him. Experience plays a lot into that, and he's certainly got that.
Well, I think one of the comments that was made, and it could have been via Felipe, which you wouldn't have heard that yet because that's being aired right now, but I think he was suggesting that Brazzo had a stronger move people to another frequency game than maybe the two of you have.
Yeah, I know on phone he did an amazing job moving guys. Very, very impressive. Um, you can only move so many people though. If they don't call you, you're not going to move them. So um, I think if you're aggressive at it, it's great. I would say I'm certainly aggressive at it. In the past, I've moved lots more mults than Dan did, but that's probably just the case of different guys calling me. It's very situational. You don't want to move every guy because then your rate suffers too. So it's a balance.
Do you feel like that's harder on CW than it is on phone?
Yeah, it's harder on CW. The thing on CW that helps though is most of the guys aren't super casual. They at least have a little bit of a idea of what's going on. On phone, you might get the random DX guy that really doesn't know what's going on, and you have to kind of coerce them to go. And on CW, they kind of have a clue, so that helps.
So we all saw on social media that you had a little soiree in London. You were able to have dinner with Mark Haynes, M0DXR. Did he have any advice for you?
No, he just said to win, and that was pretty much what he said. He said, I'll do my best. It's always great seeing Mark. I've known him for 20 years. We talked about all kinds of stuff. WRTC, of course. Obviously, I'm a big supporter. I have a mug here. I have to have out for the camera at some point. Shameless plug. If you haven't donated, these guys are working their butts off. It is the most expensive WRTC ever. Prices of things everybody knows are going up. So every little bit helps.
Chris, I know you have a lot going on today and you need to get your rest, so I won't keep you, but any final thoughts for the audience?
No, I think the bands are going to be great. I hope everybody gets on and makes a lot of contacts. Don't forget about working the 65 guys on from Madeira and the one guy from EA8. We're all trying to have fun. Madeira never sleeps, as Valery says, so I'll be on the whole time. And just enjoy it. Remember, it's supposed to be a fun game, so let's have fun.
So I guess I'd add to that to the audience. Don't forget about Chris. He's feeling a little left out right now. Put your comments, your positive comments in the chat, and let us know. Chris, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. This is Q5 Ham Radio. I've been talking to Chris Hurlbut KL9A, who is at CQ9A for the CQ Worldwide CW Contest 73.